All right. So hi everyone. My name is Amatua. I'm in 10th grade. I'm going to be conducting an interview with my co-host Alex. Do you want to introduce yourself, Alex?
Hi, I'm Alex Hamilton. I'm going into 7th grade, not 6th. And I'm going to be helping out with questions on the chat.
You guys just remember to always ask questions during the chat, and we will answer them after the interview and maybe during as well. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Robert Brutrell. It's my pleasure to introduce him. He is the vice chairman of the Farmington Interfaith Leadership Council of Metropolitan Detroit. He is also part of the board of directors of the Michigan Roundtable, and he has his own company of Brutrell Roofing that he's had for about 50 years now. How are you today, Mr. Brutrell?
Well, today, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good.
So to start this off, I want to ask you to just explain a little bit about the Interfaith Leadership Council. What is it and how it benefits Metropolitan Detroit?
All right. I was listening to you talking about hide and seek, and I thought maybe I'd have more fun with those questions than these. But I'm happy to tell you a little bit about the Interfaith Leadership Council of Metropolitan Detroit. The Interfaith Leadership Council has been a nonprofit organization for over 10 years, but it's existed really, many of the people that are involved in it have been involved in it since the 12th of September in 2001. And if you sort of do that math real quickly, you'll realize that that's the day after what everyone talks about as 9/11, right? When the towers in New York were hit by 2 airplanes, and it was an attack, of course, and caused a lot of consternation in the country. And I'm sure that all of you who do not remember that as I do, but have studied it and heard about it from people that are older than you probably all your lives, because it was a very significant event. And we realized that this was an attack by malevolent people, and there are malevolent people in this world that are evil, and that unfortunately it was going to be associated with Muslims. And so we got together, a group of us, the next day to talk about how we were going to deal with the fact that this awful event was going to be blamed on a certain group of people. And it would be so crazy in the way people would blame it on them that they wouldn't even realize the difference between Sikhs and Muslims. And so if they saw somebody wearing a turban who was likely to be a Sikh, they'd somehow interpret that as being a Muslim. And we found that actually bared out, in fact, where people were attacked. Muslim wearing men, turban wearing men were attacked. So we realized that we really needed to work immediately on issues of cultural literacy. That is, so that people would understand who it was in society that was, had faith-based beliefs, and how were we going to teach those to the community on a wider basis. And so we've spent the last almost 20 years trying to help the community, our Detroit metropolitan community, understand what faith groups believe, why they have faith values that are shared among many other faith groups, and what we can do together to educate the community and come to better understanding. So that's been the purpose of the Interfaith Leadership Council now for the last almost 20 years.
Thank you so much. So the Interfaith Leadership Council benefits Metropolitan Detroit as well as surrounding areas in many different ways. Can you name one specific example on how it benefits?
Well, we have a youth program. I don't know if any of you have participated in it in the middle schools. So, the 12-year-olds in the 7th grade. I almost said 7-year-olds in the 12th grade, but it's it's 12-year-olds in the 7th grade. And this is a major program of ours where we have almost 1,000 students and parents that are participating in that educational group, where we take people to various sorry. Can't seem to disconnect my phone. Sorry about that. You guys will have to listen to it ringing. I'm sorry about that. I disconnected my cell phone, but not the landline. So the idea anyway of the religious diversity journeys is to have 7th graders go to a mosque, a synagogue, a gurdwara, a church, and a temple, and to learn about these faith groups from the inside. To go in, they probably, none of them will have ever visited any congregation except one that they belong to, right? So if you're a Muslim, you've gone to a mosque, but you've never been to a church or a gurdwara, and so on. So we take students out of the 7th grades, out of their social studies classes, and take them to these various congregations so that they can learn directly and have experiences that will probably affect them for their whole lives. And the reason I say that it might affect them for their whole lives is because I had an experience when I was 16 years old that affected me for my whole life. We visited, I'm a Catholic, I attend a church, a Christian church, and at the time my high school took us to a synagogue. And that experience impressed on me for my whole life. And so at a certain point in my life, I started to work on Interfaith, and I realized that this was, this experience that I had was something that I wanted others to have, because it had an effect on how you thought about other people who might have it would seem to you anyway, would have very different values. Why did Jews wear yarmulkes, or a kippah, depending on what you call it? But why do they wear those little hats on the backs of their heads? And it fascinated me to then start thinking about other faith groups that had other ways of dressing and other foods that they would or would not eat, and so on. So that's been a major part of the interfaith work. In addition, what we like to do is try and teach the community that we need to work as a community on our highest and best values. And our highest and best values in faith groups are really difficult. They're not easy. When Christians say that you're supposed to love your neighbor, it's easy to love the person next door, probably. Some of us have neighbors that are difficult to love living right next door, but usually you have a good friendship with the people around you that you know well, right? But what you don't have is a friendship with somebody who speaks a foreign language, or comes from another country, or has a completely different faith experience than you do, or, as we said earlier, wears a turban. I mean, and then you discover that the men who wear turbans don't cut their hair, and then you wonder, why is it that they don't cut their hair, and what does that mean? We have a lot of values, and some of those are really difficult ethics to live up to. So we're living through a period right now where you all and we all are isolated at home, and we're isolated at home because of a disease that is affecting the community, but we're discovering that it's affecting some people in our community a lot more devastatingly than it is others. Why is that? Well, we've discovered, of course, that a lot of it has to do with racism and the way healthcare is distributed in our community, and so on. So that is, and we haven't solved it, no matter, the fact that all of us say that we, have this value that says we should love one another, or that we should care for the stranger, or we should heal the world. I can't, I don't speak any other language except Spanish, but I'm told that there's many important things in the Holy Book of Six that are similar to this. And so why is it that we have these values that are so difficult to obtain and yet are so important to us? And how do we live up to them? And so that's one of the purposes of the Interfaith Leadership Council, is to remind people that our most difficult values are values that we really need to work on, and that they're not easy. Loving strangers and caring for the stranger, as has been demonstrated at the border, the Mexican border, is it can be really abused, and terrible things can be done to people in the name of what we think of as patriotism or some other thing that we say is important, but we forget about our religious values. And so that's one of the purposes of the Interfaith Leadership Council, is to emphasize those values and to remind people that we're supposed to be working on those together, and that we need to be resilient, we need to have courage, and we need to be perseverant, and it won't be easy.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. So we have some questions from the chat. So Alex, you want to ask some of those?
First one is, what did you do mostly to help people being blamed or attacked, and what do you do now?
It broke up a little bit for me. Would you ask the question again, please, Alex?
What did you do mostly to help people being blamed or attacked, and what do you do now?
Ah, yes. Well, one of the things that faith groups do is pray, right? I think that most religious groups have some idea of how to pray. And so the first idea that occurred to us way back in 2001 was to get together in prayer vigils, and to have interfaith prayer vigils where we brought together people to talk. But we also had a very politically savvy idea that we needed to bring the press into it. We needed to bring media into it. And so we invited the TV stations and the newspapers and so on to come to those services, and they were able to take pictures of, to take video of people that were dressed in their various religious garb and so on. And so we gave people this sense that that we were coming together, and that the community had a response that was other than just anger, that we had a response to help others understand that we could work together on these really difficult issues. There was a really interesting thing that happened at one point, Alex, that I think that you all would be interested in. In 2011, there was a person who called himself a Christian minister, who was purposely in public burning books of the Quran, the holy book of Muslims. And he was creating a lot of havoc in the community, and lots of upheaval and evil and anger. And there was even reaction in foreign countries where they began to want to attack Americans, and they were rioting as a result because they thought that all Americans felt this way. And this man decided to come to Detroit and to do this kind of a thing, a very public burning of a Quran here in Detroit. And we mounted a counter message where we really captured the whole news media cycle for the day that he was there, so that he got very little press during that time. We held a prayer service at a mosque, a very famous one, the Islamic Center of America in Dearborn. And we had all of the high ministers, archbishops and bishops and imams and rabbis and religious leaders and all the faiths. And we did a little exercise where we came out of the mosque all at once and held hands and surrounded the mosque in a gesture of protection. And that received international attention. And so we really purposely stole all of the oxygen out of the hate message that this minister wanted to deliver to the city of Detroit and to the world, by just being very conscious of the fact that we would take up all of the media's time on that day with a different message. It was very effective. And so that's a couple of things that we've done.
And we have a second question. How many faith groups are represented in the Interfaith Leadership Council?
It's a good question because we don't actually have membership. The board of directors represents about 16 different religious groups, I would say. And then our 3,000 participants that regularly keep track of us from our newsletter and so on. Among those, there's probably another 50 different groups that are represented. The Pew studies actually say that there's about 110 or so discrete, differentiated religious groups in America. So there's a lot of us. Some of them are very small. You know, we all are aware of the largest ones, but there are some very small ones. But we are open to representing in some way all the faith groups. We've even held programs that talked about paganism and humanism, which is often not thought of as a religious concept, but has some of the same values involved that religious groups have. So we don't even exclude humanists or people who would call themselves secularists. And we have included even groups that are sometimes thought of as, by some religious groups, as being outside the pale of what it means to be religious, like paganism.
We're going to be going into the breakout session soon. So if there's anybody with another pending question that we can ask Mr. Brutrell, that would be a good time to do it now. And I thank you very much. And I had made a comment. I do recall that in 2011, and I'm proud to know the source of that good thing that you had done, because it was wonderful to watch it on the news. I'm wondering if we can resource that and see that, like a news clip from that. It was very powerful.
We do have the information. It might be buried a little bit at this point, but I think I can turn it up and send you something.
All right, that would be wonderful.
And I can work on it while they're in the breakout groups, Dariana.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Maybe I can come up with something.
All right, that's a great idea.
Karen asked, Amatula, can you read Karen's question about how people can join their newsletter?
Yeah, so people wanted to know how to subscribe to the newsletter. Is it like an online thing?
It is online, and it usually comes out every week unless we have a real slow news week or something like that. But we do usually put one out on a Tuesday or Wednesday each week. Go to our website, which is Detroit Interfaith Council.org or .com, either one, and you will find a place there where you can sign up for our newsletter.
Lovely.
Awesome. Before we break out, I just want to ask one more question. What advice do you have for us as youth volunteers, and how could we one day be at the level that you are at now?
Well, I bet that many of you are at the level that we're at now, because I just look around at the faces involved in this group, and it looks like you're doing some of the same kinds of things that we are, bringing people together. Education, you know, you all are of an age where education is so front and center in your lives that it's you've got a lot of different kinds of education going on, but interfaith and cultural literacy is not easy to have. So one of the things that you can do is to seek social relationships that are really active social relationships with people that are very different from yourselves. We all tend, I often say this, that we are in a world where the default condition is segregation. And it's a little less so in some schools where you are mixed together with a lot of people with different cultural experiences and backgrounds. But as you get older, you will realize that we get separated more and more into segregated groups. And we tend to go to church those of us who are participating in churches with people that are very, very much like ourselves. And you have to start, it may seem a little easier to you all now, but it's not easy throughout your whole life. And so just make a commitment to have friends, social relationships that you share. And by that, I mean you go to each other's houses, you go to each other's events. You really have the kinds of close relationships that are not just associations, that are not just, you know, somebody that you happen to know, that you really know them and they're your friend, and they will tell you if you are saying something or doing something that is offensive to their own cultural understanding. And that will be important. And it's not easy to do. And I don't think it's easy to do at your ages. It's certainly not easy to do as older adults. We tend to be very segregated and very much in our own silos. So work on that the same as you already are, except only do it more intensively and more consciously.
Thank you
Wonderful.
so much, Mr. Brutrell, number one, for agreeing to be interviewed and for giving us such deep responses and meaningful responses. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I enjoyed doing it. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. I'll sign off now. Bye-bye.
And we appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate your efforts also. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. That was wonderful. We're ready for breakout because there's some great conversations, great questions.